A statement and new documents released by a Ukrainian politician directly implicate Joe Biden in the Burisma holding scandal. The story from Interfax reads, Burisma paid Joe Biden $900,000 for lobbying. For those that haven't been following the story, when it comes to impeachment, the Democrats want Trump impeached mostly because of a conversation where he talked with the president of Ukraine and mentioned Joe Biden getting a prosecutor fired. Now, the right will say that Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, who was on the board of Ukraine, was facing an investigation from a Ukrainian prosecutor. Joe Biden leveraged American aid to force the Ukrainian government to fire that prosecutor, and that's corrupt. However, on the left, they argue Joe Biden had no conflict of interest, his son had nothing to do with him, and they found no evidence of wrongdoing. I can't tell you what to believe, but these are just the accusations. According to this story from Interfax now, and the documents released by this politician, Joe Biden may not have been trying to get this prosecutor fired because of a fear for his son, but for himself. In fact, according to a sworn affidavit from the prosecutor who was fired, he said he was going to be investigating Burisma Holdings. If Joe Biden received money from this company, it may not have been about his son, but him personally. Now, here's the sad reality. Partisan media in the U.S. is tearing this story apart and is extremely difficult to even talk about. This is like the 80th time I've tried breaking this story down. For instance, Interfax Ukraine. Interfax is actually a Russian agency. They say Ukraine news agency, but my understanding is that Interfax is actually owned and operated out of Russia. Should you trust them? I honestly don't know. Russian interests are clearly at odds with American interests. But in the U.S., they'll tell you there was no investigation. According to a sworn affidavit, there was. Should you trust this Ukrainian politician when he tells us that Joe Biden was receiving this money? Well, why should we trust a Ukrainian politician? They're not Americans. We should defer to American sources and American investigation, and right? Well, the problem is when it comes to this story, U.S. mainstream media has actually cited Ukrainian political figures. In this story from NBC News, refuting the allegations from the right, they say Hunter Biden, quote, did not violate anything former Ukrainian prosecutor says. If you're going to believe that Hunter Biden did nothing wrong, they're citing a Ukrainian political figure, in which case I don't know how you decide to ignore a Ukrainian politician saying, no, Joe Biden was receiving money from this company. I can't tell you what to believe. I can only do my best to try and break this down and show you what's going on. And we have conflicting statements from Ukrainians. We have, media in the West is not actually reporting. This is coming from a politician. They're saying Giuliani has evidence that Joe Biden received this money. Well, it's not Giuliani who, quote, has evidence. It's a Ukrainian politician who made a statement, and it's being reported by Interfax. Choose not to trust it, fine. I'm going to read through these stories, and we're going to try and figure out what's going on. But here's what I can tell you. No matter how you cut it, putting these scandals aside, Joe Biden's crooked. His family is crooked. And don't take my word for it. Let's go over to The Intercept. The Intercept is very left. Joe Biden's family has been cashing in on his career for decades. Democrats need to acknowledge that. I want to go through some statements from left-wing individuals who are calling out the Bidens and pointing out the corruption. And I want to talk about the latest allegations, of which I can't tell you who to trust. But I can say that at least some on the left are saying, at bare minimum, what Joe Biden did is soft corruption. If the Democrats don't call him out for this, they acknowledge this corruption exists, and these politicians enrich themselves and their families. And I'm going to have to say, come on, man. We all know that's true. At the very least, we can see soft corruption. Why was Hunter Biden getting $50,000 per month on the board of a Ukrainian company where he doesn't speak the language? The whole thing is fishy. You want to throw out the accusations that Trump has and the conservatives have? By all means. I don't know who to trust, and I don't know which source is being honest. But I do know that Hunter Biden had this job, and it makes no sense. I also know that a former CIA director was appointed to the board of Burisma Holdings as well. The whole thing seems fishy. But let's get started, and we'll read the story from Interfax, which, again, it's a Russian agency. I'm not saying to trust it, but we're going to read what they're reporting. Now, before we get started, make sure you head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address, but of course, the best thing you can do, share this story. Again, I'm not going to tell you what is true and what isn't. I'm going to read you these stories and try and figure it out. But what I can say is that I'm competing against a mainstream media that will only take one side, that won't even tell you that it was Andriy Derkach, a Ukrainian MP, member of parliament, who's releasing these documents. They'll tell you it was Rudy Giuliani on Hannity. Well, look, I'm trying to do my best, but I'm competing with Fox News. I'm competing with CNN and MSNBC. So if you think I'm doing a good job, I really, really ask you to share this video and explain why you think it was good. But let's read from Interfax. They say, Kiev, October 9th. Former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden received $900,000 for lobbying activities from Burisma Group, Ukraine's Verkhovna Rada member. Andriy Derkach said, citing investigation materials. Now, I'm pronouncing it wrong probably, but Verkhovna Rada is Ukrainian parliament, or I believe it means Supreme Council. Derkach publicized documents which, as he said, describe the mechanism of getting money by Biden Sr. at a press conference at Interfax Ukraine's press center in Kiev on Wednesday. Quote, this was the transfer of Burisma Group's funds for lobbying activities, as investigators believe personally, to Joe Biden through a lobbying company. Funds in the amount of $900,000 were transferred to the U.S.-based company, Rosemont Seneca Partners, which, according to open sources, in particular the New York Times, is affiliated with Biden, mostly Hunter Biden. The payment reference was payment for consultative services. Now, let's walk this back a little bit. Some reporting in the U.S. is not referring to this as a payment to Joe Biden, but that it was an extensive payment of $166,000 per month to Hunter Biden. In this particular instance, this politician is saying, no, it was for Joe. But let's read on. He also publicized sums that were transferred to Burisma Group's representatives, in particular Hunter Biden, a son of the former U.S. vice president. Quote, according to the documents, Burisma paid no less than $16.5 million to former Polish president, who became an independent director at Burisma Holdings in 2014, Alexander Kwasniewski, chairman of the Burisma board of independent directors, Alan Apter, Devin Archer, and Hunter Biden. And these are the Devin Archer and Hunter Biden are the individuals depicted in that photograph now that's gone viral of Joe Biden with the two. Now, Joe has claimed he hasn't discussed this company with his son, but here he is in a photo with two of its board members. Many people feel that Biden is not being truthful. Quote, using political and economic levelers of influencing Ukrainian authorities and manipulating the issue of providing financial aid to Ukraine, Joe Biden actively assisted closing criminal cases into the activity of former Ukrainian Ecology Minister Mykola Zlochevsky, who is the founder and owner of Burisma Group, he said. Biden's fifth visit to Kiev on December 7th through 8th, 2015, was devoted to making a decision on the resignation of then Ukrainian Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin over the case of Zlochevsky and Burisma. Loan guarantees worth $1 billion the United States was to give to Ukraine was the point of pressure. Biden himself admitted exerting pressure in his speech at the Council of Foreign Relations in January 2018, calling Shokin son of a bee who was fired. The timeline of events proves that the U.S. linked the Zlochevsky case to loan guarantees, he said. After the decree dismissing Shokin was published on April 3rd, 2016, the governments of the United States and Ukraine signed a loan guarantee agreement worth $1 billion several months later on June 3rd, he said. Now, this story is so insanely complicated because right now you have Democrats and Republicans accusing each other of the exact same thing, that Trump was withholding aid to Ukraine in exchange for political favors, while Trump accuses the Democrats, namely Biden, of withholding U.S. aid to Ukraine in exchange for political favors. Now, the issue here with Trump is they're arguing Trump is trying to negatively impact Joe Biden going into 2020. In my personal opinion, I don't think Trump cares about Biden going into 2020 because he has the incumbent advantage. His approval rating is up from where it was 2 years ago, and the economy is doing really, really well. The economy is it's the biggest driving factor in an election. Why would Trump need dirt on Biden? It doesn't seem to make sense. But the left would argue that's the case. Now, in reference to Biden, according to the accusers, would have risked, well, getting himself in trouble if this money was for him, but more importantly, his son could end up being prosecuted or called out. Could be very, very damaging for the Democrats in the long run. So both seem to have something to lose in both investigations. So let's read a little bit more. I don't want to spend too much on this story. They say, quote, in this case, there are facts should be subject to investigation. There's an agency that has powers to investigate them, the U.S. Department of Justice. If the Ukrainian Prosecutor General signs documents and send them to U.S. Department of Justice without any requests, he will accomplish his mission. He said, adding that the Ukrainian Prosecutor General has such powers. Considering international corruption in public is a way out for President Zelensky. I am certain that he is not involved in international corruption. Well, let's stop right here. And let's jump over to the next story. Rudy Giuliani has evidence that Joe Biden received $900,000 in lobbying fees from his son's Ukrainian gas company, Burisma, and claims father-son duo sold influence in China and Romania. You've got stories in NBC and the New York Post saying Ukrainian prosecutors say there's no wrongdoing and nothing going on. You've got stories from Ukrainian politicians saying, no, there was something here. Okay, I think we can solve this very simply. An investigation. We had 3 years of Russiagate. Wouldn't it make sense to investigate this? And I'm not the only one who thinks so. Take a look at this story. I want to highlight these quotes from The Intercept. Now, The Intercept is very anti-Trump. And in the beginning of the story, they spare no words condemning Trump for his behavior, calling it, a violation, etc., etc. They think he was trying to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. But it is true that Joe Biden's son was a board member of Burisma. And here's what they write. But that doesn't mean the Biden's behavior isn't a legitimate problem for Democrats. Indeed, Biden has been taking political hits over of the intersection of his family. This is a really poorly written thing. They say, Biden has been taking political hits over the intersection of his family's financial dealings and his own political career for some 4 decades. Yet he has done nothing publicly to inoculate himself from the charge that his career is corruptly enriching his family. And now that is a serious liability. By contrast, one of his opponents in the presidential primary, Senator Bernie Sanders, went so far as to refuse to endorse his son, Levi Sanders, when he ran for Congress, saying that he does not believe in political dynasties. In defending the Biden's nepotistic relationship, Democrats would be forced to argue that, to be fair, such soft corruption is common among the families of senior-level politicians. That's a risky general election argument in a political moment when voters are no longer willing to accept business as usual for now. Biden's opponents in the presidential campaign appear to all hope this. So who wrote this? Appear to all that somebody else will make the appear to all hope that somebody else will make the argument, while congressional Democrats don't want to do anything to undermine their impeachment probe, and so Biden skates. Yep. Joe Biden skates. See, this story about Rosemont Seneca goes back to April 1st. John Solomon from The Hill reporting. U.S. banking records show Hunter Biden's American-based firm Rosemont Seneca Partners received regular transfers into one of its accounts, usually more than $166,000 per month, from Burisma from spring 2014 through fall 2015, during a period when Vice President Biden was the main U.S. official dealing with Ukraine and its tense relations with Russia. The general prosecutor's official file for the Burisma probe, shared with me by senior Ukrainian officials, shows prosecutors identified Hunter Biden, business partner Devin Archer, and their firm Rosemont Seneca as potential recipients of the money. I believe this warrants an investigation. I'm not saying it's true. I don't care if you like Trump or hate Trump. We should be digging into this. And I think we should point out that there are even principled people on the left who detest Trump in no uncertain terms, saying this is soft corruption that needs to be called out. But let's get to the point. Let's make this point here. This photograph, subject of the meme that went viral when Trump posted a video with the Nickelback song. You can see Devin Archer, far left, golfing in the Hamptons with former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter, far right, in 2014. Around the same time, Rosemont Seneca Partners was receiving $166,000 per month, at least according to The Hill. They were seen together, Devin Archer and Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, but Joe Biden claims he didn't discuss this stuff with his son. Joe Biden is directly connected to this. At the very least, we could say something is fishy with Joe Biden's son, right? Well, unfortunately, this is what happens when you enrich your family through political dynasty. If Joe Biden really did get his son this job through political connections, and Joe himself did nothing wrong and there was no conflict of interest, fine. But don't be surprised when people say, you're the father of this individual receiving all this money, and we'd like to know why. Now, I'm going to stress this point here. Hunter Biden did not violate anything, former Ukrainian prosecutor says. By all means, you're free to believe that's true. But you cannot, at the same time, choose to trust a Ukrainian prosecutor and not the Ukrainian MP, or vice versa. The point is, we don't know what happened. We don't know that Joe Biden or Hunter Biden did anything. We know the accusations exist, and there are conflicting statements from Ukrainian political figures, in which case, I believe the sane thing to do, investigate. But isn't that what Trump asked for in the first place? Well, now they're trying to impeach him for it. Again, when it comes to this issue on impeachment, you have two trains of thought. That Trump was trying to dig up dirt on Biden, which I think is naive and short-sighted and ignorant, or that he was trying to dig into the origins of the 2016 Mueller probe and potentially corruption by Joe Biden. Which do you pick? Listen, when you read the news all day, every day like I do not see Donald Trump as a man who is scared of Joe Biden. Biden is polling less than aggregate. The aggregate polls for Biden are less than Warren's at this point. Trump has the incumbent advantage. His base is bigger today than it was before. He's got record low unemployment. He's got a record economy. I do not believe Trump needs to dig up dirt on anybody. Maybe, though. Maybe Trump's just a bad strategist, I guess. In my opinion, if you had to force me and I had to make a bet, I'd bet Trump is trying to go after those who he feels wronged him. It's that simple. We dealt with 3 years of Russiagate. Trump took it personally, and I think he wants to not dig up dirt to win an election. I think he's looking to dig up dirt on the people, or I shouldn't even say dig up dirt. I think he's trying to find that wrongdoing and prove it. I think that's what it's all about. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know, though. That's just where I fall based on opinion. But check this out. You want to talk about skeezy behavior. You want to talk about just corruption. Well, first, yeah, obviously Joe Biden getting his family rich. And it's not even The Intercept who's pointed this out first. Politico magazine ran a story I've highlighted before about how the Bidens have enriched themselves over the years. Take a look at this from Oliver Darcy. The Biden campaign has sent a letter to NYT exec editor Dean Baquet excoriating the paper. The Biden campaign says the New York Times has, quote, had an outsized hand in the spread of the baseless conspiracy theory that Biden abused his office for his son. Here is the letter Biden deputy campaign manager sent New York Times editor Dean Baquet. Quote, are you truly blind to what you got wrong in 2016, or are you deliberately continuing policies that distort reality for the sake of controversy and the clicks? The New York Times stood by their reporting, saying our reporting has been fair and accurate. Well, I'll tell you what. Welcome to the club, Joe. I am no fan of the New York Times. I think they get a ton of things wrong. They mutilated this paper. This story on the front page of the paper where they talk about the YouTube rabbit hole. I'm not going to sit here and pretend the New York Times has done anything right or wrong, but I will say when you have Trump calling out the press, when you then have Bernie Sanders supporters calling out the press, and they are, and now Joe Biden himself calling out the press, we got a serious problem. I don't know what to tell you, man. I really, really don't. The main reason why I've avoided this story for the past several days is because if I chose to read the New York Times, why, I'd be telling you about the scandal. If I read the New York Times, The Hill, and Politico, well, boy, does it sure look like Joe Biden is corrupt. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to trust, for the most part, those big stories. It's also true, according to the New York Times, that Ukraine was unaware Trump had held up aid. There was no quid pro quo. And now we have another story from Fox News, I don't believe I have it pulled up, that the investigation into Burisma had already been reopened earlier this year before Trump even mentioned it. So what could Trump have possibly gained, other than maybe he thought he was going to gain something? Fine. In the end, the Biden campaign is outraged. They have sent out letters saying, don't book Giuliani, he's lying. New York Times, you're spreading fake news. Sorry, you can't accuse Trump of attacking the press and then go out and attack the press. And now I'm going to say something I never thought I would say. I agree with Jacobin Magazine, the leading socialist voice in America. I don't agree on everything. In fact, I agree on mostly nothing. But I must stress, a broken clock is right twice a day. And I'm going to have to give some respect to Jacobin for this. It's a big club, and you're not in it. Take a look at this photo. Ellen DeGeneres hanging out with George W. Bush. And we're going to get into the, I want to point this out before we move forward. Here's Giuliani, Bill Clinton shaking hands. I'm not sure this guy on the right is with Donald Trump. They're all smiling and laughing. You got this one with George W. Bush and Michelle Obama. And you've got Ivanka Trump and Chelsea Clinton. Now, look, I get it. It is a big club. And you aren't in it. I don't think I'm going to go as far as Jacobin does for the most part what they're trying to imply. I think sometimes people try to be polite to each other because they have to be. But in reality, at the highest level, these people all know each other. They know the game they're playing. And what I think we're really seeing right now, and this is not coming from me. I did not make this up. This was something that was written about a couple years ago. The wealthy elites can't figure out where to go moving forward, and they've begun fighting with each other. That fight we're seeing with the media companies pushing one narrative or another, and now Trump versus Biden, it's because, yeah, they do all know each other, but hey, guess what? Even the wealthy in their fantastic cliques can have a falling out. Now check this out. Secular Talk. Kyle Kalinske. I think he does a great job. I disagree with a lot of his opinions, but I think we agree on probably most things. He said, "It would be awesome if the media didn't suck and they made everyone answer the two real important questions. Is it acceptable to take dirt from foreign governments on political opponents? Is it acceptable to enrich yourself off public service with corrupt ideals?" The answer to both of these questions: it is not acceptable to take dirt from foreign governments, and Trump has even talked about doing that. I disagree. Is it acceptable to enrich yourself off public service with corrupt deals? Absolutely not. But I'll tell you what, one's clearly worse than the other. In terms of taking dirt from foreign governments, well, let me tell you something. The Democrats did that too, right? The Democrats took dirt in order to hurt Trump's campaign. That's from Politico reporting in 2017. They apparently released information that got Manafort in trouble. Donald Trump talked about how he would take dirt if it was offered to him. He talked with Ukraine saying investigate Joe Biden. Doesn't mean he really wanted dirt. We can talk about the interpretation, but let's just say this. In one circumstance, you know for a fact that everybody's playing this game. Fine. Who are you going to blame? I'll blame them all. I don't care. Is it acceptable to enrich yourself off public service? Well, Trump was wealthy before he got into public service, and Joe Biden and Pelosi and these other politicians, I don't care if you're on the left or the right, they seem to enter politics and then become extremely wealthy. I don't care for anybody's tribe. I want to know what's true, and none of it is acceptable. So I'll tell you what. Trump has released the transcript. I saw no quid pro quo. I saw Trump ask for a favor, fine, and I think it was inappropriate. That's about it. That's just my opinion. Maybe my opinion's wrong. But now they're pushing this impeachment stuff, and it's just, in my opinion, completely just a waste of time, wrong. It's self-defeating, and the Democrats are sacrificing everything, and they know it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Beat Trump on the merits. Stop playing this game. But in the end, I think we can all point out that politicians forever have enriched themselves and their families, and I find it disgusting. Now, in response to this, someone responded to Kyle Kalinske saying, "Remind me, was Hillary Clinton the president of the U.S. at the time? Is she the president now? No, that's what I thought. Even if she did do that, it's not, the same. Really." He said, so here's the story, right? Ron Johnson was talking to Chuck Todd, and he presented a story from Politico proving that Hillary Clinton got dirt from the Ukrainians. And this guy is defending that because she wasn't in office. Kyle Kalinski's response: taking dirt from foreign governments is bad unless it's my side that does it, is definitely an argument that will hold up. Congrats, guys. Bravo, Kyle Kalinske. I completely agree. Trump should not have made that phone call asking them to look into these things. I understand he may be angry. I understand he may not like what the Russia probe did. You better believe neither do I. It was like someone drilling into my head for 3 years, and now we're doing it all over again, so I can sympathize. I get it. But I believe it was inappropriate. We do have some other news. So let me wrap this up. Look, in the end, I can make the same point I made in the beginning. Who do you trust? I honestly don't know what to tell you. But I think the Bidens are corrupt, period, and I don't care. I think Trump, to an extent, is corrupt. To an extent. Like, the issue here is Trump is an outsider. He's playing this game. He's had some shady business dealings in the past. I am not somebody who trusts the guy. But I gotta say right now, the Bidens look like establishment crony politicians, and that's what I see. I've never liked Trump. I'm not a fan of him. We can talk about his individual policies and the successes he's had with the economy. That's all fine. But when I look at these stories, what do I see? Two people I don't really like. But in the transcript, I don't see quid pro quo. I see Trump acting inappropriately. Yeah, what else is new? But I see from Joe Biden getting his son a job, getting paid $50,000 a month. I see stories about his company, Rosemont Seneca Partners, bringing in $166,000 per month. I see Joe Biden saying that we never talked about it, but then a photo popping up of him hanging out with two of their board members. Who am I supposed to trust? Listen, I saw the transcript. Trump released it. He takes this one. End of story. I don't gotta like the guy to see that he published that transcript, that portion of the conversation. Now, maybe he's lying. Maybe it's not the full transcript, fine. But you know what? How about this? Investigation into Biden, into the phone call with Trump, whatever. Now, Trump, listen, you might not trust Trump and the transcript. You don't have to. But in the end, Trump has taken more of a good faith approach, or at least an attempt to mitigate this. What has Joe Biden done? Sent letters insulting the press and demanding they don't book people? Yeah, I don't know about that one. If you're gonna try and defend yourself and Trump says we will publish the transcript, Okay. And I've heard from reporters saying that individuals with experience and intelligence saying it's as close to a verbatim transcript as you will get. What am I supposed to believe here? Okay, I don't care. Joe Biden is crooked. But let's move on a little bit. For his efforts, as I've mentioned before, John Solomon, the guy who has published a lot of these stories and a lot of these documents, he gets smeared left and right. I'm not going to read this because it's not specifically about. This is about James Comey, but they're going after John Solomon. They've called him a conspiracy theorist. They've said he's pushed ridiculous conspiracies. I'll tell you what, man. If you believe the Ukrainian prosecutor said Hunter Biden did nothing wrong, conspiracy theory. If you believe that a Ukrainian politician has said Joe Biden did wrong, conspiracy theory, right? You see how it works? If you want to accuse a sworn affidavit from a prosecutor, if you want to say it's a conspiracy theory, then it's all a conspiracy theory, and then therefore none of it is, right? If they're all conspiracy theories, why are we bothering with it? But let's move on. I'm not going to end this without highlighting that there is some heat coming in the way of Donald Trump. Giuliani associates who worked on Biden Ukraine probe have been arrested. It's a complicated story, and I don't know all of the details because it's beyond just this. But basically, let me just read it. They say the charges involve so-called straw payments of $325,000 that Parnas and Fruman made to political committees in 2018. The committee is not identified in the indictment, but has been previously reported that the pair gave that amount to a pro-Trump super PAC. The indictment also points to $3 million in contributions from the PAC to a U.S. congressman who appears to be former Republican Rep Pete Sessions. These guys worked with Giuliani on this Biden Ukraine thing, and now they're being charged. Look, I just don't think people aren't innocent, okay? It's not a perfect world. Trump is not a superhero who's come to save you. Trump is just another actor with his interests who thinks he's right. Now, I think Joe Biden's crooked. I think Barack Obama did something wrong. Let me ask a simple question, though. There's a reason why I don't care to support politicians. I do not think Trump is going to save the world. I think he's done some good things. I think getting out of Syria makes sense. I think he's done well with the economy. I think he's a bit duplicitous when he goes and talks about Saudi Arabia and supporting them with military might while then talking about how he doesn't support war. But I've never been a fan of the guy. That's fine, right? I'm not a fan of any of them. The problem I have is the media double standard. It's the left protecting Barack Obama, but then trying to eviscerate Trump and everyone who works with him. It's the obstruction and the support for Obama, the obstruction of Trump. You see how this game is played? It's just manipulation. They're all the same to me, but the media and the establishment are crooked. So in a sense, I can understand why Trump supporters vote him in. Things are better in a lot of ways. I'll ask you this question, though. Do you believe Donald Trump should be impeached over his phone call with the president of Ukraine? My personal opinion, inappropriate, but not to the level of impeachment. Do you think Trump should be impeached if he ordered a military excursion that executed an American citizen? I think most people would say, yeah, right? An extrajudicial assassination of an American citizen. It was Obama who did that. Where were the calls for impeachment? Because that to me is epically more egregious than Trump having an inappropriate phone call and acting crudely. Barack Obama did these things. And this is what really, really bothers me, right? As it stands right now with Trump in foreign policy, I'm kind of like, not so good. But some things not so bad, okay? Mostly, I would lean slightly towards bad. Escalation with Iran, though he did pull back. Saudi Arabia saying we're going to send in our troops. Really, really bad missile strike on Syria. There's been commando raids in Yemen. I don't like any of that. But he did cross the DMZ, which was symbolic and good. It's not the best thing in the world, but it is very, very important. I can respect that. And pulling troops out of Syria makes a lot of sense. Barack Obama did so many awful things, and so did Hillary Clinton. And the media never got this worked up over it. I feel like I'm being manipulated. I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. It doesn't make sense why you would allow this person to get away with all of this, and now you just don't do the same for Trump. Well, good. In my opinion, listen, I believe the executive branch is worthy of all the scrutiny it can acquire, because I do not like the encroachment of power. But what's concerning to me is the cultural power exerted by the establishment and the press, which does have allies in media, especially CNN. CNN there are these photos of Bernie Sanders looking just decrepit and horrible. And that's what you get when you turn on CNN. There's an image of Trump, and they saturated it red so Trump looks really bright and orange, and the actual White House feed looks normal. I don't like the media. I believe the media controls, for the most part, most things. And I think that's what I'm really concerned with calling out. But you're not going to see me get behind politicians. The point is, let me wrap it up here because this is a long one. Joe Biden's dirty, okay? Giuliani's associates, well, Giuliani himself hasn't been implicated necessarily. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't trust any of these people, okay? At all. Fine. But in the end, it really does seem like everything coming out against Trump is an effort to just get rid of him. So he loses and they can pull him out of office because they're mad they lost. In the meantime, I think it's about time. I think we have more than enough to demand an investigation into Joe Biden and all of these companies. I don't care for any corruption. So last thought. Either we have direct corruption from Joe Biden, who is enriching himself personally, or we have soft corruption, in which he enriches his family through his job. One of those is true, and they're both terrifying. Whatever, man. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m., youtube.com/TimCastNews, and I will see you all there.